So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I promised you a video on Waco and what it's like in Central Texas. And I need to talk to you from the heart today about what happened to me. Pete Rusick and the Waco Tribune both want to make sure that I never, ever teach again. Maybe they want to make sure that I never, ever work again. I'm not sure how bad it is or how deep it goes, but Mr. Rusick, in representing his client, has broken his settlement agreement by his very interview that he gave about the settlement I made with MCC over what they did to me. In his interview, Mr. Rusick says it's clear to everybody what happened, which is inferring that I did something wrong. Because he also goes on to say that they surely would have won their objections to my federal lawsuit, which they paid me $275,000 to settle. And then he goes on to say the insurance company forced them to settle because their expenses in defending against the lawsuit were getting too high. Which, if you believe that, I've got some swampland in Florida. Of course, we've all heard that one. So, since Mr. Rusick and the Waco Tribune want to say or want to maintain headlines that come up on Google that will make sure I'm unemployable for the rest of my life, and since MCC's Human Resources Director has also violated the settlement agreement, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Waco and Waco corruption. I promised this a few weeks ago. I gave Mr. Rusick time to correct his interview, and I've asked the Waco Tribune several times to address this because I have to work. I mean, if I wanted to, I could retire. I could just sit on my butt, maybe travel and enjoy life. I've worked all my life, but I'll tell you what, I love teaching. It's not a job to me, it's a calling, and I love helping people. I'm going to show you some pictures of what my bulletin board looked like, what my office looked like. I took great pride, it always filled my heart when I got thank yous from students, when I got positive reviews online from students, when I got fantastic student evaluations. I used to have the highest retention rate at MCC, which meant I kept my students because I asked them constantly, how can I help you more? How can I do more for you? It wasn't a job to me, it never was. So what happened to me at MCC? What was so clear to everyone that happened? Well, I walked out of my office one day with my son, and I was arrested. I was put in handcuffs, and the officer that put the handcuffs on me put them on me as tightly as he could, causing incredible pain, because he also lifted me up off my feet by the handcuffs in the stairwell of a building out at MCC. Now, he then proceeded in front of my students, in front of everyone at MCC, to drag me to an SUV, toss me inside, take my cane away from me. I was in excruciating pain because there's no room in the back of those Tahoes. So I had to lay on my side all the way to the jail. When I got to the jail, I was thrown in a tiny little holding cell, still without my cane, and kept there for, I'd say probably half a day before they finally threw me into general population. Now, what had I done to deserve to be arrested? Now, a lot of you have seen this video. It's gone viral over the incident. But what I did, what Mr. Rusick is saying is so clear to everyone that I did, was to ask a police officer to move her car so I could park in handicap parking, period. And for that, Mr. Rusick and the MCC Police Department had me thrown into the Harwell detention facility with rapists, with felons, with people who, when they asked me why I was there, thought I was lying. Couldn't believe it. The whole incident took 20 seconds. The police officer moved her car so quickly, I didn't think anything about it. I drove around her, parked, and went to my class. But before I went to that class, I told the student that I had seen him stop at the stop sign and I would be a witness for him if he needed a witness. That's what made her mad. That's what made the police chief incensed. And it took a week for MCC to find a judge who would issue a warrant to have me arrested for that. Now, under deposition, the chief at MCC said that he could have simply issued me a summons, but they wanted to prove a point. They wanted to throw me in jail. Now, since then, both their attempts, the first attempt to charge me was thrown out by the district attorney. Barry Johnson's staff threw it out because I didn't break a law. So they went back down there, and this is approved by Mr. Rusick. MCC doesn't make a move without consulting their attorney. They went back down to the district attorney's office and went attorney shopping. And several weeks later, they had me arrested again for offending a police officer. That's not a crime. The statute reads, as long as the conduct under the law that I was supposed to have broken, which is interference with the police officer, as long as the conduct is speech only, it is not a crime. There is nothing that I did that was other than speech. I didn't touch anyone. I didn't threaten anybody. And in the video, if you watch the whole thing, I asked her to move her car, please, 3 times. I said, please move your, could you please move your car, please? Excuse me, sorry. 3 times I asked her, please, to move the car. Now, people will say, and some people have commented, even some of my colleagues in MCC, which is disappointing, but why didn't I just back up and go around? Well, the problem is there's a traffic circle behind me. I can't back up into a traffic circle. There were students all over the place walking around. What if I backed up and hit a student? It's an unsafe traffic move. And she moved the vehicle so fast that I didn't have any need to back up. This whole thing was over in 20 seconds. I lost my job, I lost my career, and because of the Waco Tribune, I've lost any potential for a future. MCC has disparaged me through their attorney, Mr. Rusick. They have told ERS, and they know who that is, that I was terminated, which under the settlement agreement they're never supposed to say. They have flagrantly broken the settlement agreement. And if anybody out there is interested in filing a lawsuit on my behalf, call me. Right now, I'd prefer to put it behind me, but the Waco Tribune will not let me have a life, and neither will Mr. Rusick. If the settlement agreement was adhered to, there would be no headline in the Waco Tribune that says fired Professor Casey Hubble and MCC reach an agreement. Now let me tell you something else. Let me finish my story. When I'm in this jail, I'm in Parnell McNamara's jail, I was held overnight. And of the inmates that were brought in about the time, the convicts, or whatever you want to call them, the guests of Parnell McNamara were brought in at the same time I was the last one to be released that next night. I'm convinced what they intended on doing is keeping me the whole weekend. Because if you miss the judge on Friday morning for bail, you're there the whole weekend until Monday morning. I'm convinced that's what they wanted to do. But I had a lawyer. And that lawyer was constantly on the phone with people from MCC saying, what in God's name are you doing? So here's what I want you to understand about the Harwell Detention Facility and Parnell McNamara and his deputies down there. I had critical, life-saving medicine withheld from me on purpose. There is no other way to explain it. I'd like to tell you what that medicine is, but trust me, it's life-saving medicine that has to be administered, that I can't go overnight without taking. They knew that. They would come and take my vitals. And they would laugh at my vitals. One time, I'll never forget it, a nurse, or whoever they've got employed down there, a nurse, PA maybe, came to take my vitals. And the nurse took my vitals, which is my pulse and my blood pressure, and turned around and showed it to a deputy. And the nurse said, or the medical provider, whoever this was, looked at the deputy and said, have you ever seen vitals that jacked up before? And the deputy looked at him and went, oh my God, oh, that's hilarious. Jeez, that's terrible. And they laughed about it all the way down the hall and gone. I never saw anybody again after that. Think about that for a second. Think about what that means. These people knew that I was on the verge of a possible cardiac event and laughed about it. That's Parnell McNamara to me. That's what I think about when I think about Parnell McNamara, because that's his jail. And you know something? The incredible thing about that jail was when the inmates that were in there, about 30 other people, 32 maybe, when they found out who I was, they began to call me Professor. And they began to ask me to step to one side and talk to me and get advice on different criminal law things, different aspects of the law, different aspects of the appeal process. They began to ask me, is it right that I've been in here for months without a hearing? Is it right that I was charged with this? Professor, could you help me on this? Professor, I need to write something. Could you help me write it? And it broke my heart. because all they wanted to do was get some help. And within hours, to these guys, I was the professor again, and for the last time. Unless I get this changed. Some of these people in that cell with me were mentally ill. One of the inmates told me, "You're sleeping over in Suicide Corner." And I said, "What does that mean? What is Suicide Corner?" And he said, "Well, all three of those guys around you, in the bunk below me, and the two people beside me, have all tried to commit suicide multiple times and are over there under the camera for a reason." So I talked to these guys, especially the one that slept on the bed next to me, because the whole time I was there, which was a day and a half, they tried to keep me Friday, but my attorney was too persistent. But before I left, I made sure and I talked to him. This is Parnell McNamara's jail. And I told him, I said, "God is speaking to me. I said, God is telling me you're going to be okay. You can make it through this." And he cried. It was one of the most profound moments of my life, because I could see nobody had been there to help this kid. I don't think ever. They just threw him back in that cell with everybody else. The kid below him would walk around in circles in the cell over and over and over again, walking in circles, listening to his music. When I asked him why he was there, he said he didn't know exactly, but he was supposed to be in MHMR. He was supposed to have a bed there, is what he said, with mental health. And I said, "How long have you been here?" And he looked down at a piece of paper. He had a little journal he was trying to keep. And he goes, 3 months? And I said, "Have you seen a lawyer?" "No." "You don't know what you're in here for?" "No." "Is it in your journal?" "Let me look." "No." There were people that had been in there for months with no hearing. Months. There was one guy that watched out for me because he had been in the Army. A huge, huge man. And he went everywhere I went and watched over me. And I knew he was my protector. And I said, "What are you in here for?" And he said, "Breaking and entering." And he said, "They told me if I pled to 7 other B&Es that they'd reduce my sentence." He said, "They lied to me. They sentenced me for every B&E I pled to. They just wanted to clear them off the books." That's what the inmate told me. Now, can I look into that specifically? I've tried, but no. So I requested my medication from the deputies at the jail every hour on the hour. I made bail the very next morning after I was thrown in jail by MCC. And even though I made bail early that morning on Friday, I was kept until after 6 o'clock Friday afternoon. I asked the inmates in there if they'd ever seen anything like that before, anybody that made bail be held that long after making bail, and none of them could recall that. I asked them had they ever seen anybody have their meds withheld, and they said yes, that happens a lot down here. I can tell you my medicines being withheld was serious, and it being laughed at on more than one occasion. My requests and my sense of urgency to get the medication, not just to get out of a jail I should have never been in. I was laughed at every time. To them it was funny, and I think that says something about the reason I was there. Now, in my lifetime, I'm 60 years old. I taught 4 years at Midland College and was teacher of the year for my division 2 out of those 4 years. I taught over 20 years at Dallas County in an adjunct capacity and was nominated for Adjunct of the Year. I taught 17 years at MCC, and for 3 or 4 of those years at MCC was a mentor teacher, meaning I trained other teachers how to teach, how to be more effective in the classroom. I have never gotten, the only brush with the law I've ever had, besides this one, is a traffic ticket. I've got a few of those. To be arrested, manhandled, thrown in jail because I came to the defense of a student is absolutely unbelievable. For the Waco Tribune to refuse to tell the truth, to refuse to delete headlines that are years old now, is also unbelievable. That puny little paper is on life support. They're leaving me with no other resort but to take legal action against them. I really don't want to do that. Like I said before in the video before this, I would like to live in peace, but I have to have a chance at a life. Now, I could tell you what I think the real reason was I was arrested. But you know, I'm going to give MCC, Mr. Rusick, Parnell McNamara, the Waco Tribune, and Josh Teetons one more chance to do the right thing. The district attorney dismissed charges against me twice. The second time, they apologized to my attorney, Steve Keithley, out of Corsicana. But they won't remove the charges. They want to make me get an attorney and go have them expunged, even though they've said twice that the charges should have never been brought. So there are a lot of people out there that could fix this. My attorney said I didn't want my job back. That's not true. He never should have said that. My attorney spoke for me in that interview that's on the Waco Tribune website and did a terrible job. Those are not my feelings. And he should have objected to what Mr. Rusick said. So when I say there's corruption in Waco, all you have to do is listen to my story. I have been one of the most outspoken people in this community for a lot of reasons. When something happens, I speak up. Let me give you an example and then I'll let you go. One day, my son and I were at a local dentist office. And we were sitting there and we were witnessing a middle-aged woman literally beat the snot out of a little girl, slapping her repeatedly. The little girl was wailing and crying, slapping her, hitting her. And every time the little girl cried, she got hit a little harder. The woman noticed we were watching her. So the woman took the child into the bathroom that my son and I happened to be sitting next to. And we could hear the blows being rained down on this little girl in the bathroom. So then she brings her out, and this little girl's just covered with slap marks, red marks, all over her. And so they walked up to the checkout of the dentist's office, and the little girl said something to this woman, and she reached down and slapped her again. And my son looked at me and he goes, "Dad." And I looked at my son and I said, "You're right, that's enough." So I walked up there and I told this woman, "If you slap that little girl again, I'm calling the police." So she reached down and slapped her. So I got the woman's license plate number and called the police. When the officer arrived, I was told that slapping a child is no big deal. The officer told me that he had been slapped when he was a kid. And I said, "This was much more than that, sir." And he goes, "Basically, stay out of it." And I said, "Well, I'm going to call CPS." By the time I had called CPS, the Waco Police Department had already called them and told them not to follow up on my complaint. I thought, if a little girl can be beaten in public like this, it was worth talking to leadership at the Waco Police Department. I was told to mind my own business. So yeah, I'll stick up for people. I stand up for a lot of things. I speak up when I see things that are wrong. I don't let my family get abused. So, am I outspoken in the community? Absolutely I am. I couldn't imagine living any other way. Is that tolerated in Waco? No, it's not tolerated in Waco. And that's the reason why I was put in jail. I appreciate your time, and I thank you for listening. I hope this gets straightened out. Good night.